Ever wish you could just hit fast forward on AI training? Get ready, because this deep dive is all about a potential speed boost. It has the machine learning world buzzing, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah.
We're diving into a fresh-off-the-press research paper. We're talking published just today, October 14th, 2024.
Wow, very recent.
It's titled Optimizing L0L1 Smooth Functions by Gradient Methods.
Okay.
And while that might sound like a mouthful, trust me, the core ideas are way more intuitive than the title lets on.
Okay.
But before we get to the exciting new stuff, we need to understand why optimizing these models, especially for deep learning, can feel like such a slog. It's a bit like trying to climb Mount Everest in flip-flops.
Yeah, a very accurate analogy. The world of deep learning is all about training these incredibly complex models. But the process is computationally expensive and notoriously time-consuming.
So what makes the existing methods feel so flip-floppy?
Well, traditional methods often rely on this assumption called Lipschitz smoothness.
Right.
Imagine trying to predict how bumpy a road is, based solely on the first few feet.
Okay.
Lipschitz smoothness assumes a certain level of predictability in the model's landscape.
Okay.
But deep learning models can have sudden sharp drops in curves that throw that assumption right out the window.
It's like using a map of rolling hills to navigate a roller coaster.
Exactly. And that's where this new research comes in.
Okay.
Recent studies have found a stronger connection between what we call the Hessian norm and the gradient norm.
Okay.
Think of the Hessian norm as measuring the sharpness of the curves on a roller coaster, and the gradient norm tells us how steep the track is. At any given point, this new research focuses on something called L0, L1 smoothness, which offers a new lens for understanding these relationships.
Okay. L0, L1 smoothness. It sounds like a secret code to unlock faster AI. Can you break it down for us?
It's less of a secret code and more like a new pair of glasses. That gives us a clearer view of the optimization landscape. L0, L1 smoothness defines a broader category of functions, including those with those really sharp curves that traditional methods struggle with.
Okay.
It's like our old map only showed us the main roads. But with L0, L1 smoothness, we discover all the hidden side streets and shortcuts.
And why is this new perspective such a big deal for optimizing machine learning? What's the advantage of finding those shortcuts?
Because it more accurately captures the behavior of many machine learning problems, especially those tricky deep learning models. By considering L0, L1 smoothness, we can develop more efficient algorithms that take advantage of those shortcuts. Instead of trudging along the main road, we can zip through those side streets and get to our destination much faster.
So we're not just talking about incremental improvements here. This sounds like it could be a game changer for how we train AI. But how does this new understanding actually translate into faster optimization in practice? What changes are we making to the algorithms themselves? That's what we'll unpack in part 2 of this deep dive. Last time we talked about how optimizing machine learning models, especially those complex deep learning ones, can sometimes feel like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded.
Right.
But we learned there's a new approach in town, this L0, L1 smoothness thing, that might help us crack the code faster, so no more fumbling in the dark.
Exactly. And the really exciting part is that this new research isn't about reinventing the wheel with entirely new algorithms, It's about giving the tools we already have a serious upgrade.
Okay, so we're talking about souping up the engine, not building a whole new car. I like that. What kind of improvements are we talking about?
This paper focuses on refining what we call gradient methods. Think of them as the workhorses of machine learning optimization. They're the fundamental algorithms doing the heavy lifting behind the scenes.
So we're giving those workhorses a boost. Tell me more.
Absolutely. The paper digs into 3 key areas. First up, smarter step sizes. Instead of taking the same size step every time towards the optimal solution, imagine adjusting your stride based on the terrain.
Okay.
That's what these new formulas for step sizes do. They factor in the L0, L1 properties of the function, taking bigger steps on smooth terrain and smaller, more cautious steps when things get a little hairy.
That makes so much sense. It's like using a trail map that tells you where the steep climbs are so you can pace yourself accordingly.
And these smarter step sizes actually tie in beautifully with the concept of clipping,
Okay.
which you might have come across before.
Right.
Clipping helps to prevent those sudden jumps in the optimization process that can throw things off track. This research provides a fresh perspective on clipping, helping us understand how to use it even more effectively.
That's one down. What about the other 2? Give me more optimization upgrades.
The second refinement is all about normalized gradients.
Okay.
The beauty of this approach is that you don't need to know everything about the function beforehand to optimize it.
Okay.
Think about it like navigating a city. Without needing to know the exact distance to every single landmark,
Right.
you use your knowledge of the general layout and landmarks to find your way. Normalized gradients work similarly. They leverage the geometry of the optimization landscape to guide the process.
So it's like having a compass and a map instead of needing turn-by-turn directions. That sounds way more adaptable.
Precisely. And finally, we have something called Polyak Step Sizes.
Okay.
This method really shines when we already know the optimal value we're aiming for, which happens quite often in certain machine learning scenarios.
Okay.
It's like knowing exactly where you want to go and constantly adjusting your path based on how quickly you're getting closer.
So we've got these smarter step sizes that adapt to the terrain. This adaptable approach with normalized gradients that helps us navigate without needing all the information up front, and then this clever Polyak method that uses the function's own progress as a guide.
With all these improvements, are we talking about shaving off seconds, minutes, or something even bigger here?
That's where things get really interesting. For certain types of problems, specifically those involving what we call convex functions, this new approach translates to significantly faster training times.
Okay.
We're potentially talking about orders of magnitude faster, not just a little speed boost. It's like upgrading from a horse and buggy to a high-speed train. Wow, a high-speed train for AI, that's impressive. But what about the real world? Which isn't always as predictable as those convex functions you mentioned. What does this mean for those trickier problems?
We'll tackle that question when we come back for the final part of our deep dive. Okay, we're back for the final leg of our deep dive into the world of faster AI. We've been talking about this groundbreaking research that could turbocharge machine learning, and it sounds like we're on the cusp of some major breakthroughs.
It's very exciting stuff.
But before we get too carried away with all the excitement, let's take a moment to reflect. We've covered a lot of ground today, from those pesky optimization challenges to the promise of L0, L1 smoothness, and all the cool algorithmic upgrades it unlocks. So what's the big takeaway here? What does it all mean for the future of AI?
Well, you're right. It's easy to get lost in the technical weeds, but the potential impact here is huge. This research has the potential to significantly speed up how we train AI models, particularly in deep learning, where things can get incredibly complex and time-consuming. So are we talking about faster training times, more efficient use of resources, maybe even entirely new applications for AI that were previously impossible because of those limitations?
You're absolutely on the right track. However, it's important to remember that we're still in the early stages of exploring this new territory. While the results for those convex functions we discussed are incredibly promising, the real test will be applying these ideas to the more unpredictable, Messier problems that are more common in deep learning.
Those tricky non-convex functions, always keeping us on our toes. So more research is needed before we can pop the champagne and celebrate a new era of lightning-fast AI.
Precisely. This paper has laid the groundwork, providing a solid foundation for developing a whole new generation of optimization algorithms. But the real magic will happen when we figure out how to translate these theoretical advancements to those real-world practical problems that deep learning is designed to tackle.
So it's not a matter of if, but when we'll see these advancements translate into tangible, game-changing applications.
Exactly. And that's what makes this field so exciting. The possibilities are truly mind-boggling. Imagine a world where we can train incredibly complex AI models in a fraction of the time it currently takes, using fewer resources, and unlocking new frontiers that were once considered out of reach. We can see breakthroughs in everything, from medicine and climate science to personalized education and even artistic expression.
It's like we've stumbled upon a secret map. And now the real adventure begins as we explore this uncharted territory of faster, more efficient AI. It's going to be an exciting journey.
It certainly will be. And here's a final thought to ponder. As you continue to follow this fascinating field, what if this new understanding of L0, L1 smoothness is just the tip of the iceberg?
Ooh.
Could there be even deeper, more fundamental principles governing this optimization process, waiting to be discovered? Principles that might completely revolutionize how we approach AI training in the future.
That's an amazing question to leave us pondering. A huge thank you to our expert for taking us on this incredible deep dive. And to our listeners, stay curious because the world of AI is evolving faster than ever. Ever feel like AI is learning by magic? Like, how do these algorithms actually learn?
Well, today, we're peeling back the curtain and diving into the nitty-gritty of how this all works. Specifically, we're talking about optimization.
Yeah, it's a bit like imagine searching for a needle in a haystack. But the haystack is made of math, and it's constantly changing shape.
Okay, terrifying image, but I get your point. And that's exactly what this research paper we're diving into tackles head-on, how to optimize or find the best solution, even when the problem is crazy complex.
Right.
They call it optimizing. L0 with two smooth functions by gradient methods, and it's all about a new kind of problem that's popping up more and more in AI these days.
Yeah, for a long time, we relied on algorithms that basically assumed the problem was relatively smooth. Like, picture a gentle hill.
Right.
But as AI takes on tougher challenges, think deep learning that assumption, it just doesn't cut it anymore.
So less rolling hills and more Mount Everest with hidden crevasses.
Exactly. And that's where this L0, L1 smoothness comes in.
It's a way to describe those more rugged, more unpredictable landscapes.
Yeah.
You know, the ones that actually show up in modern AI.
So less smooth jazz and more heavy metal for our algorithms to handle. But before we get into the how, let's break down what L1 smoothness actually means. Hit me with your best, like, ELI5 explanation.
All right, so imagine a valley, right? But the ground is made of memory foam. The more you press down, the larger the step you take, the faster you sink.
Okay.
But, and here's the sponginess of that memory foam, how much resistance you encounter, it can change. And it can change depending on both where you are and which direction you step.
So it's like navigating a valley where the rules of physics keep changing. Tricky.
Precisely. And to make things even more interesting, this L0, L1 smoothness, it's not just one fixed thing. It's flexible, you see. It can adapt to describe a huge range of functions. And that's key because in real AI problems, you have tons of different functions all interacting.
Like a mathematical orchestra with each instrument playing a different tune, but somehow it needs to sound harmonious.
You could say that. And the beauty of this paper is that they don't just describe this new, more complex terrain. They figure out how to navigate it effectively.
Which brings us to the heart of the paper, gradient methods. Now, I hear this term thrown around a lot, but can you give us a quick and dirty explanation?
Think of gradient methods as taking carefully calculated steps downhill in this crazy memory foam valley we've been talking about. But here's where it gets interesting in this L0, L1 smooth terrain. The size of each step you take is absolutely crucial.
Oh, so it's like those step counting apps, but for AI, right? Instead of aiming for 10,000 steps a day, we need the perfect number of steps with the perfect size to reach peak AI fitness.
You got it. And what makes this research so groundbreaking is they've essentially reverse engineered the formula for those perfect steps. Get this, they actually came up with two formulas.
Two formulas.
Yeah, one equation 3.2 in the paper is a bit more complex. The other equation 3.5 is a simplified version. But, and here's the kicker, both of them work incredibly well at finding a lowest point, even in this constantly shifting landscape.
Two formulas. Are they like the Coke and Pepsi of gradient descent, or is one clearly superior?
That's a great question, and it's actually something they address in the paper. What they found is that both formulas have their strengths, depending on the specific problem you're trying to solve.
So options are always good, but it gets even cooler. They connect these formulas to something called clipping step sizes, right? This sounds familiar from other machine learning stuff I've read.
It's a common technique where you basically put a cap on how big a step your algorithm can take.
Okay.
And for a while, it was more of a rule of thumb, you know, a trick that just seemed to work well in practice.
So they just threw it at the wall and hoped it would stick.
Pretty much. But thanks to this research, we now have a solid mathematical understanding of why clipping step sizes work so well, especially in this L0, L1 smooth world.
So we're not just throwing darts in the dark anymore, we're understanding the science behind it. This is what I love about deep dives like this. Suddenly, these really complex ideas, they start to click. But we've got more ground to cover, different valley shapes, the magic of normalized gradients, and something about accelerating our descent.
You know, we've been visualizing this whole optimization thing as finding the lowest point in the valley, right?
Right.
Well, imagine that valley could be shaped like, well, anything.
Okay, I'm all about creative visualization, but you're going to have to elaborate on that one.
Sure, sure. I'm talking about the difference between what we call convex and non-convex problems.
Okay.
A convex problem is like a perfectly smooth bowl. There's one clear bottom, and any direction you go from the starting point will eventually get you there.
So like rolling a marble around in a bowl, it always ends up at the bottom.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But now, imagine that bowl is warped, dented,
Yeah.
maybe with a few extra bumps and dips thrown in. That's a non-convex problem. You can have multiple false bottoms, you see. And that makes it way harder to be sure we've actually found the absolute best solution.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. It's like you think you've hit the jackpot, you're at the bottom, but then nope. There's another, even lower point somewhere else. Talk about frustrating.
Exactly. And this is a huge challenge in AI because so many real-world problems, they're inherently non-convex. But here's what's remarkable. This paper shows that these new gradient methods, the ones designed for L0, L1 smooth functions, they can handle both scenarios incredibly well.
Okay, so no matter how wonky our AI valley gets, these methods can navigate it. That's impressive. But what kind of concrete improvements are we talking about here?
Well, for one, these new methods are far less sensitive to what's called the initial gradient norm.
Okay, time for a quick explain it like I'm 5. Breakdown. What in the AI world is an initial gradient norm?
Imagine you're standing at the very top of that memory foam valley, right? The initial gradient norm basically tells you just how steep the terrain is right at your starting point.
Okay.
Some older methods, they could get easily thrown off course if that initial slope was super steep.
Ah, okay.
But these new methods, they're much more robust. They can handle a sudden drop without getting flustered, so to speak.
So no matter how intense the terrain is at the starting line, these algorithms are ready to rumble.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And there's another win. These methods, they avoid something called exponential dependency on L0 and L1.
Okay.
To put it simply, imagine our AI problem is like a giant puzzle, right?
Okay.
As that puzzle gets more complex, with more pieces and more connections, the older methods would essentially, well, they'd collapse under their own weight. Their calculations would become exponentially more difficult, slowing everything down to a crawl.
So it's like trying to run a marathon while carrying a mountain of bricks. No thanks.
Exactly. But these new methods, they sidestep that problem entirely. They've figured out a way to scale up gracefully, handling those increasingly complex problems without breaking a sweat. That's a game changer for AI.
No more AI meltdowns as things scale up. Music to my ears. But let's be honest, sometimes we don't know the exact lay of the land beforehand. It's like setting off into that foggy memory foam valley without a map or a compass. What happens then?
That's where these normalized gradient methods come in. They're like equipping our AI with a sixth sense for navigating tricky terrain, even without a perfect map.
Color me intrigued. How do they manage to pull that off? Are we talking AI ESP here?
Not quite ESP, but close. Instead of relying on fixed step sizes, these normalized methods, they adjust their approach with each and every step based on the steepness of their current location.
So like feeling out the terrain as they go. Clever.
Exactly. They adapt to the landscape on the fly, which is crucial when you don't have all the information up front.
So they're like AI mountaineers adjusting their route based on the ever-changing conditions of the mountain.
Perfect analogy. And here's what's truly remarkable. Even without knowing the terrain perfectly, these normalized methods achieve the same level of efficiency as the methods that do have all the information in advance.
Hold on, I need to back up. They achieve the same efficiency without knowing the terrain. That's like navigating blindfolded and still winning the race. You're telling me this is a big deal.
It's huge. It demonstrates an incredible level of adaptability and efficiency.
So we've got these adaptable algorithms. They're finding the best solutions. They're handling complex terrain. But let's be real, in the world of AI, faster is always better, right? Can't we just slap on a turbo button and call it a day?
I wish it were that simple.
Yeah.
But these researchers actually did discover a clever way to accelerate this whole process. They call it a two-stage approach.
2 stages. Okay, I'm listening. What's the game plan?
Think of it like this in stage 1. Our goal is to quickly get to a decent starting position in the valley. We're not aiming for perfection just yet, just a solid foothold. Then in stage 2, we unleash the secret weapon, a special type of accelerated gradient method called AGM-SDR.
AGM-SDR. Catchy. Sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It stands for Accelerated Gradient Method with Small Dimensional Relaxation.
And I'm guessing this small dimensional relaxation is where the magic happens.
You got it. This is where things get really interesting.
So we left off with this AGM-SDR, this secret weapon for like speeding up AI training. What's the deal with this small dimensional relaxation? It sounds relaxing, I guess. But also, Kind of cryptic.
It's more exciting than it sounds, I promise.
Uh,
Remember how we've been talking about navigating this complex valley? Well, AGM-SDR essentially finds a shortcut, and it does it by, get this, temporarily shrinking the problem down.
Shrinking it down.
Yeah, like to a smaller, one-dimensional version of itself.
Okay, so instead of tackling this whole massive multidimensional AI problem at once, it breaks off a tiny, more manageable piece and finds the best path just within that slice. Is that what small dimensional relaxation means?
You nailed it. It's like taking a cross-section of the valley, to get a feel for the terrain. And the amazing thing is, by optimizing within this smaller, simplified problem, AGM-SDR, it gains these insights that actually translate back to the larger problem, allowing it to zero in on the best solution much faster.
Whoa, so it's not just relaxing, it's like a strategic retreat to come back even stronger.
Exactly. And the paper actually points out that this approach, this is what allows AGM-SDR to outperform even some of the most recent gradient methods out there. It's impressive stuff.
Wait, so this two-stage approach, using regular gradient methods to kind of get a foothold and then unleashing AGM-SDR, it's beating out the competition. That's a huge EE win for AI.
It is. And it gets even more interesting. The fact that they highlight this one-dimensional aspect, this small-dimensional relaxation, it suggests that there might be even more potential for future research here.
You're speaking my language. It's like they found a secret passageway to faster AI training, and now we need to explore where it leads, right? Like, could this be the key to unlocking even more efficient ways to navigate the complexities of AI optimization? What if, by understanding these smaller scale problems even better, we could find even more powerful shortcuts to the best solution?
It's an exciting thought. This paper, it opens up a whole new avenue for exploration. We're not just talking about incremental improvements here. We're talking about potentially revolutionizing the way we train AI models.
Okay, now I'm really geeking out. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive. We explored this whole new terrain of L0, L1 smoothness. We learned how gradient methods are evolving to conquer this more complex landscape. And we even got a glimpse of the future with this mind-blowing AGM-SDR.
It's been quite a journey. And the best part is, this isn't just theoretical. This research, it has enormous implications for the future of AI. As the models we build become more intricate and data-hungry, we absolutely need efficient ways to train them. These gradient methods, particularly with advancements like AGM-SDR, they offer a promising path forward.
Faster, more efficient AI training, here we come. A huge thank you to our expert for guiding us through this fascinating research. If you're as captivated by the potential of gradient methods as we are, be sure to check out the full paper. We'll link to it in the show notes. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep. All right, so get this. Today's deep dive, we're all about making things faster.
Okay.
But not just any old things. We're talking algorithms, those engines behind how computers learn and solve problems.
Right.
Specifically, we're going deep on something called gradient methods.
Yeah.
For this really intriguing class of functions, L0, L1 smooth.
And if that sounds a bit like alphabet soup to you,
Yeah,
don't worry. That's what we're here for.
that's right.
Think of it this way. Imagine trying to teach a computer to, let's say, identify different types of birds in photos.
Okay.
The algorithms it uses to learn from the data to figure out, okay, this is a robin, that's a sparrow.
Right.
They rely on these gradient methods.
Okay.
But it turns out the math behind those methods,
Yeah.
it works even better with these L0, L1 smooth functions,
Okay.
which are surprisingly common in machine learning.
So we're talking about potentially making those algorithms learn faster, become better bird identifiers,
Yeah.
just by understanding the math behind them a little differently.
Exactly.
That's kind of awesome.
It's all about finding more efficient ways for the algorithms to navigate through the data and find solutions.
Okay.
Now, you might be wondering what makes these L0, L1 functions so special.
Yeah, what is it about them?
You see, in the world of optimization, we often make assumptions about how smooth the functions are.
Okay.
Imagine a smooth, gradual hill versus one that's really bumpy and jagged.
Okay, so I can picture that, and you definitely need a different approach to climbing each one.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, these L0, L1 smooth functions, they're like those bumpier hills.
Okay.
And our old assumptions about smoothness, they don't always hold up so well.
Right.
These functions, they capture those bumps more accurately, especially in complex areas like deep learning.
So we need to adjust our approach. tweak our climbing gear, so to speak,
Exactly.
to handle these bumpier functions more effectively.
And that's where this L0, L1 framework comes in. It's like getting a better map of the terrain, one that shows us where those bumps are so we can navigate them more efficiently.
So instead of blindly trying to climb those hills, we're getting a better lay of the land first.
Precisely.
Okay.
And this new understanding, it's leading to some really interesting breakthroughs in how we design optimization algorithms, especially when it comes to finding the right step sizes.
Step sizes, you've piqued my curiosity.
Okay.
Tell me more.
So imagine you're using gradient descent,
Right.
which is like our trusty algorithm for finding the lowest point in this bumpy landscape.
Okay.
The step size determines how big of a step the algorithm takes as it's trying to find its way down.
Okay.
Too big,
Yeah.
and it might overshoot the target. Too small, and it might take forever to get there.
So it's like finding that Goldilocks step.
Yeah.
Not too big, not too small, but just right for navigating those bumps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And with these L0, L1 smooth functions, those step sizes become even more crucial. That's one of the things this research dives into. It helps us calculate more effective step sizes,
Okay.
ones that are specifically tailored to this new type of smoothness.
So we're not just blindly guessing anymore. We're getting smarter about how we choose those steps.
Yes.
Okay.
And the paper we're exploring today, it actually presents a few different options.
Okay.
One, for example, uses a technique called clipping.
Clipping.
See, it turns out researchers have been using this clipping method even before fully understanding why it worked so well.
Oh, really?
It was like they stumbled upon a shortcut without realizing it.
A happy accident.
Well, more like intuition at work.
Okay.
And this paper, it actually gives us the mathematical understanding behind why that clipping method is so effective for L0, L1 smooth functions. It's like we're finally figuring out the science behind that shortcut.
Okay, that makes my inner math nerd very happy. So we've got these new insights on step sizes, but we also need to consider the landscape itself, right? We talked about smooth bowls versus bumpy hills.
Yeah.
Does that shape, that convexity or non-convexity, make a difference in how well these algorithms work?
You're absolutely right. The shape of that landscape, whether it's a nice smooth bowl or a treacherous mountain range, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
In optimization, we call those smooth bowls convex problems.
Right.
And those bumpy landscapes non-convex.
And I'm guessing most real-world problems are more like those bumpy landscapes?
You got it. Things like training AI models.
Right.
Those are often non-convex problems.
Okay.
And that's where this research gets really exciting.
Okay.
They found that by using these L0, L1 smoothness properties,
Right.
they could actually improve the speed at which these algorithms find solutions, even for those trickier non-convex problems.
Okay, so faster solutions, that's always a good thing. But how much faster are we talking here?
Well, they proved mathematically through something called Theorem 3.1
Okay.
that their approach leads to a significant improvement in what we call the convergence rate. Basically, it's a measure of how quickly the algorithm zeroes in on the best solution.
So it's not just a hunch.
Right.
It's backed by some serious math.
Exactly.
Okay, what about those smoother convex problems?
Yeah.
Does this new approach help there too?
It does. In fact, for convex problems, the improvement is even more dramatic.
Wow.
They demonstrated this through Theorem 3.2.
Okay.
It's like finding a shortcut through a valley instead of having to navigate all the little twists and turns.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So this L0, L1 smoothness, it's like having a superpower for gradient methods.
It is.
But let's say we're trying to apply this in the real world. We don't always know everything about those functions beforehand, right?
Right.
It's not like we always have a perfect map of that bumpy landscape.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
In many real-world scenarios,
Yeah.
we might not know those exact L0 and L1 values that perfectly describe the function's smoothness.
Right.
It's like trying to navigate a maze in the dark.
Okay, so how do we find our way if we don't even have a flashlight?
Well, that's where things get even more ingenious. The researchers developed something called the normalized gradient method,
Right.
which is a way to adapt on the fly.
Okay.
It's like having a set of night vision goggles for our algorithm.
Now that's what I call thinking outside the box. Tell me more about how these night vision goggles work.
So instead of needing to know those exact L0 and L1 values beforehand,
Right.
this normalized method,
Yeah.
it adjusts the step size based on the information it gathers as it's going along.
Okay.
It's like feeling its way through the maze,
Uh-huh.
taking smaller steps when it senses danger,
Right.
larger steps when the path seems clear.
That's incredible. It's like it learns as it goes.
It does.
But does it still perform well even without that perfect map?
It does. Theorem 4.1 shows us that this normalized method, even without knowing those L values precisely,
Right.
still achieves a very good convergence rate.
Okay.
There is a slight caveat, though. You need some idea of your starting point relative to the solution. It's like
Okay.
having a rough sense of where you are in the maze, even if you don't have the full picture.
That makes sense. Now, what if we do have a bit more information?
Okay.
Let's say, in addition to our night vision goggles, we also have a compass that points us towards the maze's exit.
Okay.
Would that be helpful?
It absolutely would, and that's where another fascinating approach comes in, something called the gradient method with Polyak step sizes.
Polyak step sizes, okay? Sounds like something out of Star Trek.
A little bit, yeah.
Break it down for me.
Imagine you're trying to reach the bottom of a valley,
Okay.
and you have a special compass that always points to the absolute lowest point.
Right.
That's kind of what the Polyak method does.
Okay.
It uses the optimal function value, which we'll call f, as its guide.
So it's like having a homing beacon for our algorithm.
Exactly.
Does it actually work as well as it sounds?
It does. Theorem 5.1 tells us that using this Polyak approach also leads to a very competitive convergence rate,
Okay.
potentially even surpassing the normalized method in certain situations.
Wow. This is incredible. I've got all these different approaches, each with its own strengths.
We do.
Is there anything else we can add to our optimization toolkit from this research, or have we covered it all?
We can't forget about acceleration.
Okay.
The researchers also introduced a method to potentially supercharge the convergence process,
Okay.
especially for those smoother convex problems we talked about earlier.
Hold on, we can make things even faster.
Yeah.
Now I really need to know more.
This acceleration method, outlined in section 6,
Okay.
it's a bit more involved.
Okay.
It actually works in 2 stages.
Okay.
The first stage uses regular gradient descent for a short period,
Okay.
kind of like warming up the engine.
So we're easing into it before hitting the gas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That initial phase
Yeah.
helps get us closer to the solution,
Right.
into a region where the function is behaving nicely.
Okay.
Once we're in a good spot, stage 2 kicks in,
Okay.
and we unleash a special type of accelerated gradient method
Okay.
called AGM-SDR. AGM-SDR.
Yeah.
That sounds powerful.
It is. This method takes advantage of that smoother terrain,
Uh-huh.
allowing us to take much larger, more efficient steps towards the solution.
So are we talking about a significant speed boost here?
We are. Theorem 6.2 shows us that this two-stage procedure can be significantly faster than traditional methods.
Okay.
However, it's worth noting
Yeah.
that there might be a bit of a trade-off.
What's that?
It involves a slightly more complex calculation at each step,
Okay.
which could add some computational overhead depending on the problem.
Okay, so maybe not a free lunch when it comes to complexity,
Right.
but potentially a much faster lunch nonetheless. This has been an absolute whirlwind of information.
It has.
I'm blown away by how much faster these new methods can be.
Yeah.
I mean, who wouldn't want to turbocharge their AI training times? It's definitely exciting research, and it has the potential to really shake things up in the world of optimization.
For sure.
What stands out to you as the biggest takeaway from all of this?
Honestly, it's hard to pick just one thing.
Yeah.
I think the biggest eye-opener for me is how this whole idea of L0, L1 smoothness,
Right.
it sounds pretty technical at first,
Yeah.
is actually leading to these really practical improvements in how we train AI models and solve complex problems.
It really highlights how important it is to keep refining our mathematical understanding, even in fields that seem very applied,
Yeah.
like machine learning.
Right.
Sometimes those theoretical breakthroughs can lead to huge leaps forward in what we can actually do.
Absolutely. And those step size adjustments we talked about, those really blew my mind.
Yeah.
It's amazing how even tiny tweaks can make such a big difference in how quickly these algorithms learn.
It's a great reminder that optimization is all about finding those marginal gains. Sometimes the smallest adjustments can have the biggest impact on efficiency.
And speaking of efficiency, those adaptive methods,
Right.
the ones that are like night vision goggles for our algorithms,
Yeah.
those seem like game changers for dealing with real-world problems where we don't always have all the information up front.
They represent a real shift towards more flexible and robust optimization strategies. So
Right.
we're teaching our algorithms to learn and adapt on the fly,
Yeah,
which is essential when you're dealing with the complexities of real-world data.
absolutely. And then there's the acceleration aspect.
Right.
I mean, the idea that we can actually supercharge these optimization processes
Yeah.
with methods like that two-stage AGM-SDR approach, that's just mind-blowing.
It's incredible to see how researchers are constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible. And while there might be trade-offs to consider, like increased computational complexity,
Right.
the potential speed improvements are incredibly tantalizing.
It makes you wonder what kind of doors these faster optimization methods might open in the future.
Yeah.
Will we be able to tackle problems that seem completely out of reach before?
It's an exciting thought.
Yeah.
As these techniques continue to evolve,
Right.
I think we'll see a ripple effect across many different fields.
Yeah.
We might be able to develop even more sophisticated AI models,
Right.
analyze massive data sets faster than ever before,
Yeah.
and gain deeper insights from complex systems.
It's like we're standing on the edge of a whole new world of possibilities.
It is exciting.
And to think, it all stems from understanding these L0, L1 smooth functions a little bit better.
It just goes to show that even in the world of algorithms and optimization,
Yeah.
there's always more to discover.
Right.
And those discoveries often lead to unexpected and groundbreaking applications.
Well said. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into the world of L0, L1 smooth functions and their impact on optimization.
It's been fun.
If you're as fascinated by this topic as we are, we encourage you to check out the source material for yourself.
Absolutely.
You'll find even more incredible details and insights waiting to be explored.
Definitely.
Until next time, keep those brains buzzing
Keep thinking.
and keep asking those what-if questions.
Ever wish you could just hit fast forward on AI's learning curve? Well, today's deep dive, we're exploring a paper. And it might actually have the keys to doing just that.
Yeah, what we're looking at here, it could actually reshape how we think about AI in the future, way faster, way more efficient. Imagine training AI models, but it only takes a fraction of the time, way less computing power. It's pretty huge.
Okay, so this research paper just came out last week, and everyone's talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it all starts with this idea of smoothness in math. And I got to be honest, when I first heard that, I was like, really? That's the big thing. But humor me here, because there's a reason everyone's so excited.
Yeah. It's not exactly a term that, grabs you by the collar, but it's really the core of all this. Think about it like analyzing a mountain range, right? You got your peaks and valleys. Traditional math, with this thing called Lipschitz smoothness, it could only really handle rolling hills. Nice and predictable. But this new research, they're introducing L0, L1 smoothness. And what that does is it lets us measure how jagged, how extreme those peaks and valleys are, even in the most crazy, complex landscapes. It's like we've got a way better map now.
So it's like we traded in our old compass for a supercomputer GPS. We can handle the really tricky stuff now.
Exactly. And this paper, they take that and apply it to something called gradient methods. Now, these are algorithms that are constantly searching for the absolute best solution to a problem.
Yeah.
But they need to know which way to go. Imagine trying to find your way to the bottom of a valley, but you're in thick fog. You need the right tools to make sure you're headed in the right direction, right?
So these gradient methods, they're like expert hikers who just always seem to know the best path down the mountain. And now they've got even better maps and compasses to guide them.
Exactly. And what's really cool is that this research didn't just improve gradient methods overall. They found ways to make them incredibly specific. They dug in and found 3 distinct methods, and each one has its own strengths, depending on what you already know about the problem you're trying to solve.
Ooh, I like where this is going. It's like a mathematical method mixer. Each one's got its own personality, its own strengths.
Yeah.
Tell me more about these methods.
Okay, so first up, we got the classic, the gradient method. But they've added a twist. Imagine knowing the absolute best size for every step you take, no matter where you are in that mountain, no wasted effort, just pure efficiency. And this paper, they actually found the formula to do just that.
So it's like finding the perfect stride length, whether you're running a marathon or just, strolling through the park, no wasted energy, maximum efficiency. I like it.
You got it. Now imagine a hiker who doesn't even need to look at a map beforehand. They just have this feel for the terrain, this intuition, and they can adjust on the fly as they go. That's the normalized gradient method in a nutshell.
That is impressive. It's like they've traveled so much they don't even need Google Maps anymore. They just have a feel for the city. Okay, I'm liking this one. What about the third method?
The last one, this one's called Polyak Step Sizes. It's like having a secret weapon or maybe a cheat code. Let's say you're designing a robotic arm and you already know the most efficient resting position. Polyak Step Sizes swoops in and helps you get there in the least amount of movements possible.
Ah, so it's like a head start in a race. Every little bit helps. I'm starting to get how each of these methods is unique. But how do they all work together? I mean, are they competing? Are they like a team? And, how does this actually play out in the real world? I need some concrete examples.
Those are great questions, and luckily that's exactly what we're going to unpack next.
All right, so we've got these three AI hikers, each with their own little quirks and styles. It's a pretty fun image. But how do they actually work together?
Well, that's what I think is so cool about this research. It doesn't just give us these awesome methods, it tells us how to choose the best one for the job.
So no more like throwing a dart at a dartboard and hoping for the best.
Exactly. It's about getting the absolute most out of these algorithms, less wasted effort, which is huge in AI, right? Even tiny improvements can make a big difference.
Absolutely. Less number crunching, more actual breakthroughs. But speaking of speed, we got to talk about this accelerated gradient method with small dimensional relaxation thing, AGMSDR, as the cool kids are calling it. What is that all about? Some kind of secret weapon?
Kind of. Remember we were talking about finding the fastest way down the mountain? Well, AGMSDR is like finding a shortcut, like a zip line straight to the bottom.
Yeah.
Especially for those really complex problems, the high-dimensional ones, it can make things crazy fast.
High-dimensional problems. That sounds kind of intense.
It can be, yeah. Imagine trying to find, like, one specific grain of sand in the entire Sahara Desert.
Okay, yeah. I get the picture. AGMSDR, though, this shortcut, there's got to be a catch. There's always a catch.
Well, you're not wrong. It's powerful, but it needs a bit of a nudge sometimes to get going. Like, it needs help finding the start of the shortcut, you know?
So it's like a high-performance engine, but it needs a little priming to get started.
Exactly. And that's where those other gradient methods we talked about come in. They're not just individual hikers anymore, they're a whole team. They can do the prep work, scout things out, and even give AGMSDR that initial push it needs to take off.
Ah, so it's a relay race. Each gradient method does its part, passes the baton, and boom, they cross the finish line together. I love it. But this is still pretty theoretical, right? I mean, these gradient methods, AGMSDR, how does any of this actually work in the real world?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's what we'll get into next.
All right, so we've got our AI hikers. They're all ready to go. We've even got AGMSDR waiting for its turn to shine. But I need you to, like, rub it all home for me. How does this actually change things out there in the real world?
Well, imagine if we could develop those life-saving drugs, but in a fraction of the time, because AI can analyze all the possibilities so much faster. Or think about climate models, but they're so much more powerful, they can give us a much clearer picture of what the future holds. That's the kind of impact we're talking about.
Okay, see, now that's what I'm talking about. We're not just talking about saving time and money here. We're talking about potentially saving lives.
Yeah.
It's like AI is already amazing, but this could amplify its impact in ways we haven't even thought of yet.
And that's the really exciting part, right? This isn't just about solving the same old problems faster. It's about opening up entirely new possibilities. What seemed impossible a few years ago suddenly becomes within reach, and it's all because we dug a little deeper into something as fundamental as smoothness.
Wild, right? It really is. It's like we found this like secret passage in math, and it leads to this whole new world of possibilities. Pretty amazing.
It is, and honestly, we're just scratching the surface here. This research, it's like the foundation. Now it's up to everyone out there, all the brilliant minds, to take these ideas and see what they can build with them.
So what you're saying is this L0, L1 smoothness thing, it's not just some math puzzle. It can actually change the world.
Absolutely. This is one to watch, for sure, because it has the potential to change how we live, how we work, how we understand the world around us.
Well, there you have it. Turns out something as, I don't know, seemingly basic as smoothness could be the key to unlocking AI's true potential. Just goes to show, sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come from the most unexpected places.
It's been great exploring all of this with you.
And a huge thank you to all of you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring. Okay, so have you ever like been waiting for an app, like an AI app or something to process some data, and it just feels like it's taking forever?
Yeah.
Like you're just sitting there tapping your fingers thinking, come on, what's going on in there?
Yeah, I think we've all been there. It's like watching the spinning wheel of doom.
Right. It makes you wonder, like, are these AI systems really all that smart if they're taking this long to learn?
It's not just about speed, though, right? I mean, we want these AIs to be like actual learning machines,
Right.
constantly getting smarter and faster.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's actually what we're diving deep into today. We're looking at a new mathematical approach that could, like, seriously turbocharge the way machines learn,
Yeah,
hopefully leading to those aha moments a little bit quicker,
definitely.
And get this, the paper we're looking at is called, are you ready for this?
Mhm.
Optimizing L0, L1, Smooth Functions by Gradient Methods.
Okay, I'll be honest, that title sounds a little intense.
It's a tad, right?
Even for me, and I kind of geek out on this stuff. But what we're really talking about here is like a fundamental shift in how we understand how AI learns, which is really exciting.
Okay, so less equations, more impact.
Exactly.
I like it. But before we get ahead of ourselves, maybe we should take a step back.
Mm.
For those of us who aren't, math whizzes,
Right.
what's the big deal about optimization in machine learning in the first place?
So optimization, it's really all about efficiency. Imagine you're trying to, let's say, teach a computer to recognize different breeds of dogs.
Right.
It has to go through tons and tons of data, pictures, labels, descriptions. It's a lot. And it has to figure out what actually makes a Chihuahua different from a Great Dane, right?
Right.
So optimization is like giving that computer a roadmap to navigate all that data and find the best solution and find it fast.
So instead of our AI just randomly barking up every tree,
Yeah, exactly.
it has a clear path to becoming like a champion dog spotter or something.
Exactly, exactly. And traditionally, this roadmap, it was based on this idea of Lipschitz smoothness. Okay.
Basically, it assumed that the learning process was, relatively smooth and predictable. Like, imagine you're walking down a well-paved road.
I gotcha. But anyone who's spent like 5 minutes with AI knows that data can be anything but predictable. It's messy, it's complicated, there are surprises around every corner.
You're telling me. And that's actually where this whole L1 smoothness thing comes in. It's like, instead of that paved road, we're giving our algorithms an all-terrain vehicle.
Ooh, I like it.
Now they can handle the bumps, the twists, the unexpected detours.
So tougher algorithms for tougher data.
Exactly.
I can already tell this is going to be big, but how does it actually work? What is it about this L0, L1 smoothness that makes it so special?
So you can think of Lipschitz smoothness, our old friend, as like trying to describe the entire Rocky Mountains as if it were just one smooth hill.
Okay.
I mean, it works for simple cases, right?
Right.
But as AI models got more and more complex, especially with this whole explosion of deep learning, it just wasn't cutting it.
Deep learning, those are the heavy hitters of AI, right?
Exactly. The ones doing image recognition, natural language processing, all the really complex stuff.
Yeah, the stuff that makes you feel like the future's already here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And those complex problems, they need a more, shall we say, nuanced approach.
Okay.
And that's what L0, L1 smoothness brings to the table.
Okay.
It lets us describe all those sudden jumps and steep drops and unexpected plateaus that you actually find in real-world data. Instead of that blurry outline, we get a high-resolution topographic map, every peak and valley.
So we can really see what our AI is up against.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got our all-terrain vehicle, this L0, L1 smoothness thing, ready to tackle some seriously gnarly data.
Yeah.
But how do we actually, steer this thing? How do we tell our AI where to go in all this messy data?
That, my friend, is where gradient methods come in.
Gradient methods.
Yeah, they're like the navigation system for our AI.
Okay.
Guiding it through the data towards, the best solution, the best model. Okay, so say our AI is on a mission to find, like, the best cup of coffee in a city that's full of cafes.
I like it.
The gradient method is like having the superpowered coffee sensing app that's like, hey, go 2 blocks this way, then turn left. You're getting closer.
Yeah, exactly. And just like any good navigation app, gradient methods have to figure out the best route, right? How big of a step to take, which direction to go.
Right.
And that's what's so cool about this research. They actually give us a bunch of new ways to calculate those steps, and they can do it with incredible precision.
So no more wandering aimlessly into every cafe on the block.
Exactly.
Our AI is going straight to the good stuff.
Precisely. No more wasted time. And the cool thing is they actually analyze different ways to calculate these steps.
Okay.
Each one has a different trade-off between how accurate it is versus how much computational power it takes.
So like choosing between a scenic route and taking the expressway.
Yeah, exactly. And they even have what they call the optimal step size, which is the theoretically the shortest possible path to the best coffee in the city.
Oh, the holy grail of coffee finding algorithm.
Right. But in reality, it's, sometimes it's not that straightforward.
Right. There might be road closures, traffic jams, you name it.
Exactly. And in the world of AI, we don't always have all the information up front, right?
Yeah.
So this optimal step size, it's amazing as a benchmark, but they also introduced this simplified version, which is way more practical.
Okay, so it's like using real-time traffic data to find a route that's still fast, even if it's not the absolute shortest path.
You got it. It's all about being smart about it. And actually, this reminds me, you mentioned the clipping step size earlier.
Right. That was in the paper, too.
That one's been around for a while. It's like this rule of thumb that AI people use.
Yeah.
And basically, it limits how big of a step the algorithm can take at once.
So no more sprinting headfirst into a cafe without checking the reviews first.
Exactly. And what these researchers did, which is super cool, is they connected this clipping thing to those more, mathy step size formulas we were talking about.
Okay.
Turns out clipping, it's actually a really clever way to approximate that optimal step size, even if you don't have all the information.
It's like finding a shortcut that gets you to the good coffee 99% of the time.
Exactly. I love that. But, we've been talking about finding the best solution, like it's always this straightforward thing.
Right.
What happens when the data landscape itself is more like a roller coaster, with all the ups and downs and unexpected turns?
Okay. Yeah, that sounds a little more realistic, to be honest.
Right. And that's where these things called convex and non-convex functions come into play. And that's actually where this L0, L1 smoothness thing really shines.
Okay, you're going to have to break those down for me, because
Yeah.
it sounds like we're about to do some serious AI acrobatics.
Basically, imagine this. With a convex function, it's like you're trying to find the bottom of a bowl. No matter where you start, there's one clear path down to the very bottom.
Okay, convex functions, non-convex functions, it's all starting to sound a little like AI parkour to me.
Right, like we're navigating an obstacle course of data.
Exactly. So walk me through this. What's the difference between these two function flavors, and why does it matter?
So remember that bowl we were talking about? With a convex function, finding the best solution is like rolling down that bowl. You always end up at the bottom no matter where you start.
So pretty straightforward for our AI coffee quest. Just follow the scent of deliciousness downhill.
Exactly. But with a non-convex function, it's like someone swapped that bowl with like a giant bumpy trampoline.
Okay, so instead of one clear path, we've got like hills and valleys and maybe even a few holes we could fall through.
That's a great way to put it. There could be all these like local optima that seem like the best solution, but they're not actually the very best,
It's like stumbling on a pretty good coffee shop, but then realizing later you were just a block away from like the best one in the city.
Exactly. And the thing is, a lot of real-world AI problems, they're non-convex. The data is just inherently messy.
So how do we make sure our AI isn't getting stuck in those local coffee shops, those good enough solutions?
Well, that's where this research really shines. They show how these L0, L1 smoothness methods, they can actually find those really good solutions, even in those really tricky non-convex situations.
Okay, so maybe not the absolute best cup of coffee in the universe,
Right.
but definitely one worth trying.
Exactly. And what's even cooler is that for the more well-behaved convex problems, this approach, it totally blows other methods out of the water. It finds that best solution way faster.
So no matter what kind of data landscape we're dealing with, this is like a speed boost for AI learning.
Exactly. It's like they found a new gear that we didn't even know existed before.
Okay, that's amazing. But let's crank up the complexity just a notch here. What happens if we don't even know what kind of landscape we're dealing with in the first place?
You're talking about adaptive learning, right? Where the AI has to figure things out on the fly.
Exactly. It's like sending our AI hiker out without a map or a compass. Just good luck. Find the best coffee.
Exactly. And the research actually explores a couple of really cool methods for this.
Okay, hit me with them.
One is called the normalized gradient method. And it's kind of like, instead of taking fixed steps, the AI adjusts its stride based on, how steep the terrain feels.
So like smaller steps when it senses danger?
Exactly. It's all about being responsive to the data.
Okay, that makes sense. And the other method?
This one's called the Polyak Step Sizes gradient method. And what's cool is it actually uses whatever information we do have about the destination.
So like even if our AI hiker doesn't have a map, maybe they have a compass that tells them, hey, you're getting closer to that amazing coffee shop.
Exactly. So even in those uncertain situations, there are still ways to nudge the AI in the right direction.
Okay, this is seriously blowing my mind. We've gone from basic maps and compasses to, like, AI hikers with night vision goggles. But we've talked about efficiency. We've talked about adaptability. Is there a way to actually make the learning process, like, faster?
Oh, there totally is. And that's where it gets really exciting. They actually propose this really clever two-stage approach to
Yeah.
actually accelerate learning.
Ooh, two-stage. This sounds intense. Lay it on me.
Okay, so picture this. Stage one, it's all about using those techniques we were just talking about, those careful steps, the compass, everything to get the AI close to a good solution.
Okay.
But then once it's in the right ballpark, bam, stage two kicks in.
It's like our AI hiker just found a secret shortcut, like a hidden zip line that takes them straight to the coffee shop.
That's such a good analogy. And the second stage, it uses a special type of acceleration method that's like super efficient for that specific region of the data.
So we're not just exploring the data landscape anymore, we're flying over it.
Exactly. And the best part is, this new acceleration method, it actually avoids some of the problems that other methods have, so it's way more reliable.
This is seriously impressive stuff. But it's more than just impressive, right? This research have the potential to, like, really change the game when it comes to AI.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about potentially training AI models way faster, tackling those super complex problems that we could barely even dream of before.
And that means
And that means, faster drug discovery, more accurate medical diagnoses, AI that can really understand us. The possibilities are kind of endless.
so we could be on the cusp of a whole new era of AI thanks to this L0, L1 smoothness breakthrough.
Exactly. And that's what I love about digging into research like this. It's not just about the math, it's about catching a glimpse of what the future might hold.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this. If we can make AI learn this much faster, this much smarter, what's next? What challenges will we face? What amazing new possibilities will open up? It's something to think about as we enter this exciting new chapter in the story of AI. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.